So hi, my name is Carmen Ordonez, and this is my policy project focusing on democratic integrated systems and inclusive approaches for Central American countries. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm double majoring in international relations and political science. I'm also pursuing a Latin American and Caribbean Studies certificate. I'm the student programming intern here at FIU in DC, and some of my interests involve foreign affairs, Latin America, international development, as well as global issues. So when it comes to actually integrating democratic systems within Central America, I wanted to model it after the most successful countries as of right now within there. One of them being El Salvador, and we actually visited the embassy there last week. So basically El Salvador has been transitioning to the safest country within Latin America, which currently it is the safest right now. And it has been able to do this through its 5-year plan, which focuses on improving security, economic prosperity, as well as governance. And as well as it has received a lot of economic aid from China, which has gone towards funds for technology, new infrastructure, and education. And also, President Bukele has been able to help a lot in terms of progressive reforms. And Miss Universe 2023 also boosted a lot of tourism for the country, which has been able to provide a surplus amount of money to boost the economy overall within El Salvador. And over here in the graph, it is a development indicator for El Salvador showing how much it has grown over time in terms of development in the country, which is also modeled after USAID's plan, which basically means that USAID, after it intervened within El Salvador, it has been able to sustain itself as a country, but also go beyond in terms of development, not just in terms of sustaining itself, but also to just keep improving overall. And another study that has been improving towards democratic growth is Guatemala. And within Guatemala, January 2024, there was an election which President Arevalo is one of the first of many in a long time that Guatemala has had a democratic president or moving towards democratic transitions. And because of this, it's been able to secure democratic elections coming from USAID's involvement as well through its Cooperation Development Strategy, also known as CDCS, which was a 5-year plan as well, like El Salvador, in which USAID also intervened within Guatemala, and through this they've been able to actually secure more democratic pillars. Also, in President Arevalo's term, he's been able to develop a 10-point anti-corruption strategy, which has been able to improve transparency within the country, as well as clean up public contracting, improve civil service overall, and eliminate government jobs, which are basically bribes from civil supporters. So my asks within this project is going to be to include more Central American countries and Latin American projects and research. Specifically, I want the Latin American Caribbean Center at FIU to complete at least 4 projects annually, which is concentrated on improving Central American development and greater international presence overall for those Central American countries. And my client is Dr. Anthony Pereira, which he is the director of the Kimberly Green Latin American and Caribbean Center. And some key stakeholders or organizations I think can greatly help to improve upon this project: USAID, OAS, ECLAC, which is a UN body, Partnership for Central America, and the Central American Integration System. So what does this actually mean in terms of implementing these asks? So one of them is going to be expanding upon relations with the Central American Integration System, which has a consultative committee, also known as CICA, in which they actually improve security measures in order to make sure that these democratic transitions are being implemented, as well as hold socialization forums in order to actually move their proposals towards national governments for them to improve their policymaking processes. Another one is going to be getting reports from the Central American Security Commission, and with these reports, they'll be able to identify enablers of drug trafficking as well as organized crimes. Another one is a consultation for the Central America Municipal Autonomy Charter, which basically emphasizes the importance of moving these democratic pathways towards not only just civilians, but as well as safeguarding these pillars of combating corruption. And one of my main ones is expanding USAID Memorandum of Understanding, also known as the MOU, with FIU. And basically, this agreement is a cooperation agreement with FIU to actually help minority serving institutions such as FIU to implement more Latin American projects. And lastly, exactly how are we going to measure these implementations in terms of how they are successful? One of them being accountability and transparency. I think actually holding these people accountable for their actions by implementing stricter measures through bodies or organizations that can be created, that can be composed of change makers, civil society groups, intergovernmental organizations can help to actually hold these people accountable, as well as strengthening anti-corruption efforts. USAID actually has one really effective measure which involves giving incentives to these countries to implement anti-corruption efforts as long as they are labeled as funds for anti-corruption efforts. Another one, donor-supported programs, which involves self-explanatory, giving donors the ability to be able to give back to these countries that actually need those resources for development. And then resource accessibility, mainly in countries within Central America, the rural and urban areas do not have the same amount of access to resources. So I think improving upon those levels between each other and really just creating those guidelines for them to like have that same level is important as well. And lastly, development cooperation, setting up guidelines and timeframes to make sure these projects are actually being enforced and implemented effectively. And then these are some of the things I've done throughout the semester relating to my project. 2 weeks ago, we went to the Guatemalan embassy. Last week, we went to the embassy of El Salvador. That third picture over there is me presenting at an event about Mexico's nearshoring policies. Right here is Leland Lazarus presenting his project on allies and key partnerships within Latin America international relations. This is a conference I attended, which FIU also hosted on new perspectives on foreign policy in the Americas. And right here is former Congresswoman Ileana's event about Central America and Latin America in general and how to improve upon its development, which I've been able to network with a lot of people there who have also helped me in terms of resources for the project. And yeah, thank you.
So does anyone have any questions for Carmen? Our esteemed panel?
You have a question. I'll let you go first.
Great job on your presentation. I found it very interesting how you tied in a lot of anti-corruption themes within it. Having previously worked for USAID on their anti-corruption task force, which has now become a whole department within the agency, do you know if USAID specifically is focusing their anti-corruption efforts on those countries that you mentioned, or is it just like an overall theme that you've seen?
It is. They have like these 5-year plans within each country, specifically with El Salvador and Guatemala. They have been working on that over the past 10 years, I would say. And normally, like every single 2 or 3 years, I believe, from a mentor I recently received advice from, she told me that they implement like different models, and that way they reform it every so couple of years. So that way they actually see that, okay, like this is actually helping, these measures are being implemented, and yeah. Thank you.
No, great job, great presentation. Not a question, I just want to pick your brain on this one. I don't even know the answer, but it seems as if kind of El Salvador and Guatemala, maybe even Ecuador, President Nuba, I believe, are showing there's a lot of leaders that are younger. Do you think there's a correlation between young leadership and anti-corruption rather than just like older established leaders that have been there that are easier corrupted?
I would say within young leadership, for sure, I think there is less corruption. Seeing as El Salvador's case, Bukele, he's like actually one of the youngest presidents, especially within El Salvador. And because of that, his millennial, I guess, progressive like reforms that he's been creating, about 82% of the population actually from the University of Central America said that like they've been more satisfied with like supporting him, as well as they've been living like more happily and healthier lifestyles. So I think for sure younger presidents.
I think there's a trend within the countries. This president spoke with Mayor Adams, and like they're able to get their country under control and trying to turn things around. So just wanted to see.
Cool. Thank you. All right, good job, Carmen.
All right, hi everyone. So for my presentation for the Hamilton Policy Project this semester, I was focusing on artificial intelligence and how it's affecting higher education, and specifically institutions. And my presentation basically shows a look at how this is changing learning and instruction within these learning institutions. So as an introduction, my name is Mariana Hernandez, and I am majoring in criminal justice and psychology. And next week, I'm actually graduating. Thank you. But this semester I had the privilege to be able to intern with the Library of Congress as a congressional relations intern in their office. And just to give a background with some context of my presentation, before we get into the ask and everything, I just want to give some background just in case some people have some base knowledge on AI and some don't. These are the two forms of AI that we'll be looking at. There are different forms, but these are the two that I want you guys to be able to take a look at. So generative AI is the main one we'll be looking at today. That one focused more so on patterns from pre-existing data. So you'll be looking at that pre-existing data, and from there it generates that new data based on those patterns. So we can see this on social media with realistic images. You can search up, I don't know, like Carmen in a hat, and it'll show her with a hat if she's never worn a hat before. That's just how they're generated. And you can even see it online. Some artists, you'll see a song and you're like, wow, this person posted a new song, and it's not them at all. That's just AI, and that's how it was generated. It takes a song that they posted previously and uses those words to be able to create a new song with their vocals, and that's kind of what makes it sound like a real song from them. And then from there as well, it generates text. We see that, for instance, with ChatGPT, and you can look at a prompt and just give it to them. You can say, write me a thesis about Caribbean studies, whatever, and it'll create a whole essay for you. And from there, that's from the generative AI. And the output from that is creating content. That's what I want you guys to pay attention to, creating content. Now we're gonna move on to predictive AI. And with that, that's mainly leveraging historic data, and they're able to forecast or predict future outcomes. So predictive AI, generative AI. With predictive AI as well, you can look at the industries, for instance, in finance and even with marketing, they use predictive AI to be able to guess how consumers will kind of behave with certain product launches. Will a product demand be high in this season or the next season? And that's kind of what they use with the predictive AI. So from there, the output is forecasting or predicting. Generative is more so creating the content. And in my next slide here, I'm going to be talking about the client for the project, which is FIU, but specifically their department, the Center for the Advancement of Teaching. So I picked this client just because they're the ones that kind of oversee and are in charge of learning and instruction within our university as well. And this is just their mission statement, but we'll also be looking at Erica Canton. She is the Director of Educational and Faculty Development at FIU. So she's kind of the one pulling the strings when it comes to curriculum, when it comes to advancement and technologies within the curriculum. That's what her team does. And before I continue, I did want to tell a little story that happened to me a few weeks ago. I went to this HSI reception, which is Hispanic Serving Institutions, and I met this amazing woman there, and she works as a director of communications for this community college in like Austin, Texas. I don't know the name. And she was talking to me about how she's worked there for 15 years. And I don't know her age, but I'm assuming, use draft numbers. But she said she's been there since she was a part-time student assistant at the college. And I said, yeah, so you've been there for 15 years. I'm assuming you've seen some things change. And she very bluntly is like, no, nothing has changed, like at all. And I was like, not even like curriculum? Like, are you sure? And she's like, nope, they use the exact same PowerPoints, the exact same curriculum. And I'm standing there, I'm doing math, and I'm like, so you're saying since 2009, you haven't changed anything in the curriculum? And she was like, nope, they're using the exact same PowerPoint, the same data, like nothing is changing. And even though it is a community college, if you are teaching these students based on data from 15 years ago, when we all know so much has changed since 2009, that's going to be a reflection in the students and in their education and all those individuals that they meet pretty much the rest of their lives, just because those professors and the faculty, they're teaching based on old data and technology. So I want to talk about that before I get into the client. So these people here are doing the opposite of that. They're making sure they're at the forefront of the innovation, making sure that they are teaching based on evidence-based. They're making sure their teaching is inclusive, and they're telling the truth with their teaching, and ensuring that the faculty members and the professors as well are teaching top-notch with excellence. and that's just pretty much the mission statement. But here on this slide as well, I'm sure you guys are asking yourselves, how can AI enhance learning and instruction in higher education? And I'll tell you how. So AI can be able to democratize access to education and ensure a judgment-free learning with those platforms to be able to enhance the quality of learning and assessment. That's what's important, the quality of learning and how they're being assessed. And like I stated earlier, making the education more inclusive and effective. So here on the right side is my ask for the policy project. So it would be continued funding towards FIU's strategic plan that they've released from 2024 to 2030. And their plan includes robust initiatives, and they can integrate that into their research programs. And this can include training faculty members, training professors. Thankfully with students, we're kind of covered. We have like a base knowledge of AI. And thankfully also at our university, we have our artificial intelligence micro-credentials. So students can take that on campus. I think it's also FIU Develop. You can take those micro-credentials. And it's kind of like an online course. You just learn more about this subject. But this would be specific towards training these faculty members and professors. That way they can integrate the AI into their curriculum with their students. And this can then also hopefully lead to FIU developing ethical guidelines to govern AI use. Of course, we have academic integrity to think of as well. Is this going to be allowed in thesis, in our dissertations, for our programs? And this is just in hopes that it would be allowed. With the timeline, it would be updated to include AI-enabled research tools, training the researchers, and included into their studies to evaluate the effectiveness. We are up in the standings in our rankings with research. I read today that I believe FIU is top for our doctoral programs. We're basically the highest for research in South Florida, basically. So if you look at UM, like all those schools, like whatever, but we are pretty on top of research. And I'm sure you guys all read the article that happened recently with cancer. I mean, we're just on top of it with our innovation and our discoveries. We're just taking all the innovations that are happening and we're using it to our advantage to be able to find these new discoveries. And yeah, in accordance with President Biden's FY24 budget proposal, this would include $30 million for the National AI Research Resource Pilot. And this is a crucial step in building that shared research infrastructure to strengthen the access and the data resources for those bold AI discoveries and innovations. And this is something good. As of right now, the U.S. Department of Education, their Office of Educational and Technology, they are currently developing policies to focus on effective, safe, and fair use of AI-enabled educational technology. So pretty much we're going in the right direction with the U.S. Department of State. And on that note, we're going to look at our key stakeholders here. These are the important people that I'll be reaching out to for the project. But on this side, you'll see Congresswoman Anna Eshoo and her co-chair, Congressman Michael McCaul. They're both the co-chairs of the Congressional Artificial Intelligence Caucus. And they're pretty much looking at the latest technologies, the bad side, the good side, and the opportunities that can come from these changes. You'll see in the middle, like I mentioned, the Department of Education, Department of Labor, Committee of Science, Space and Technology. And on the right side there, you'll see Congressman Neil Dunn. Quite recently, he was appointed by Speaker Mike Johnson to be able to lead the newly created bipartisan House Task Force on Artificial Intelligence. And within that task force itself, we have a good amount of Florida representation, and those are the other Florida delegates. But yep, those are the key stakeholders. And on this slide, this is just a step-by-step or more so examples of how AI can slowly be integrated within the curriculum. The easiest example is the new ways professors can create new lesson plans. Like I mentioned earlier, that woman I spoke with, the PowerPoints are the same for 15 years, like that's a problem. You cannot be having the exact same lesson plan for a whole new generation. It's the same as their parents. I mean, I'm assuming if she has kids or grandkids, they're probably learning the same things as her, and that's a step back in what we should be doing as a university or even her community college. So yeah, just integrate that into lesson plans and incorporate that into their AI responses. So that could be their assignments, for instance. she could be spending more time, probably the professor, grading papers, looking at their thesis, their dissertations, instead of her having to come up with different questions for their simple 10 quiz assignment. And next would be helping students also recognize the limitations that could come from AI, because there's of course the good and the bad that can come from it. And limitations could be, of course, that lacks the creativity that humans have. So of course, the professor can use the prompts to answer the questions, but the students can also see, you know what, this could be missing, you can add this instead, and that can help the students build their critical thinking skills. And the next step as well, it's talking about ChatGPT, and that's pretty much, as you know, you just put a prompt and it can kind of write the rest for you. And with students, they can be able to teach the students to critique it, like I was saying, that you can add more into the thesis statement, more into the dissertation, and pretty much shorter written work as well. It can just lessen the time that you can spend writing an essay, and you can put that attention towards something else. Pretty much for the most part, this is helping professors, teachers, and faculty members help them get ahead in their research and their discoveries with the university, but as well inside and outside of the classroom. And that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions.
Okay, so my question is, what are some of the challenges that, professors and teachers may face when it comes to AI or incorporating AI into their lesson plans, or just, having that, like, what's some of the challenges?
Yeah, there are a lot, definitely, and a lot of it can be prevented just from them being educated on it. But pretty much if they are educated and they are able to kind of understand the problems that can come from AI, which there are a lot of problems, they can be able to combat that and be able to spend that time with this program, of course, to be able to learn from it and kind of have an expert explain it to you. I'm sure we've all seen, like, at the Apple store, those old people that they're with the expert and they're teaching them step by step how to use an iPhone. Those are people taking time out of their working hours to teach them how to do that, whether it's their grandson or whatever, but it is easier to have an expert and be able to break it down for you step by step, so that way when you're on your own doing it, you don't have those issues. So some challenges might come from that if they're doing it on their own and they don't have that awareness or that understanding. That's where some problems may come.
And then for your professors, can y'all use ChatGPT? Can students use ChatGPT
In my class?
in your class?
Well, that's the issue. Like right now, that's not a thing. So that's just in hopes that the university can allow it later on, because it's the whole question of academic integrity. And I have had some friends myself, they've gone in trouble where they submit something and even on like Turnitin.com or something, it'll register that it's been on ChatGPT. So there are programs that show if AI has been used, and that's kind of where they get the F. But it does depend on, obviously, if you're just cheating the whole time or just trying to add a thesis statement, and that's where you're getting it from AI. But for the most part, myself, I have not used it on assignments.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay.
I'm not here to tell.
Thank you.
I was curious.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Good evening, everyone. My public policy project is on the social determinants of health. More specifically, it's on transit-oriented development in the Miami-Dade County area. But before we begin, my name is Lidia Núñez de la Torre. I'm studying psychology and statistics at Florida International University, of course. And this semester, I'm a global leaders intern for the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, where I've had the opportunity to intern for Congressman David Valadao, representing California's 22nd District, and the Home Depot for the Government Relations Office. For our ask, we are asking for increased financial support and resources directed towards augmenting the expansion and the frequency of public transit services within the underserved neighborhoods of Miami-Dade County. Here, one form of public transit that I want to touch on is rail. Here on the left, we have a map of DC's Metro Rail, and you can see how extensive it is. The red line runs all the way to Maryland, and we have yellow, blue, and silver lines, and even orange lines, expanding all the way down to Virginia. And here on the right, we have a map of Miami's Metro Rail, and
it's very evident that it only covers a minuscule part of Miami. So when we talk about underserved neighborhoods in Miami, we're talking about North Miami Beach, Homestead, North Miami, Miami Gardens, and even Miami Lakes, which sounds surprising to say, but it would still be considered underserved under these parameters. Now, how does transit-oriented development tie into social determinants of health? Well, a lack of transit-oriented development in an area can... Sorry, y'all, I just blanked out. But a lack of transit-oriented development can, I just blanked out again. Let me look at my notes. That's so bad. Okay. So a lack of transit-oriented development can exacerbate the health disparities experienced by, let me just grab my notes. It can exacerbate the health disparities experienced by socioeconomically disadvantaged communities or challenges in many ways. So in one way, it could be the limited access to healthcare facilities or even limited opportunities for physical activities, social isolation, and even mental health problems. And it just overall creates a hazardous environment for anybody not in an automobile. For our clients, we have Dr. Mariana Sanchez, whose research focuses on health disparities, and Dr. Xia Jin, whose research focuses on transit demand forecasting. As for our key stakeholders, we have Rep. Frederica Wilson, who's on the Committee for Transportation and Infrastructure, and Rep. Mario Diaz-Balart, who's on the Committee for Appropriations, and I specifically chose them due to their ties to Miami-Dade County. But what is currently being done? Recently, Miami-Dade County has launched their initiative, the SMART program, which stands for the Strategic Miami Area Rapid Transit. And it's essentially, it plans to advance 5 rapid transit corridors, 2 of which being rail and 3 being BRTs, which stands for bus rapid transits. And I think this is a step in the right direction to support the wellness of our current and future populations, as well as the economic and employment growth within our region. Questions?
Can we go back to that slide with the map of Miami transit system?
Yes.
No, that's really interesting because
We first opened the Metro in 1984. It's been 40 years, and the fact that we only have 23 stations and 24 miles of coverage is insane to me.
coming from New York City, I can look at these maps and if you combine it, it's still gonna touch ours. Would you say though also kind of the determinants of health, like what about food deserts, right? I guess I don't really know the population of Miami, but just looking at it is kind of crazy because maybe inward, I don't really see.
There's so much. It would have been better if I maybe did a side-by-side
Oh, no, I
comparison of
just don't-
Miami-Dade County because there's so much more. Like my home is not even on the map. And I'm sure like many people's homes here are not on that map.
Oh, look, I'm like a little to the left, so I believe public transportation should be free. But you know, if you don't have a car and you're not next to any type of public transportation, of course, lack of mental services and food and health
Exactly.
can really exacerbate, like you said, kind of the crisis going on. So just wanted to add that point. But that's amazing to see. I've only been to Miami maybe 3 times. But maybe more.
Are there any communities that you it was a surprise to you that there wasn't a transient area going through, basically?
Yeah, like Miami Lakes, Miami Gardens. There's just a big population, and especially near the Tri-Rail. So Golden Glades, I'm not sure if you know, near Opelika. The Tri-Rail runs, but how do you get to the Tri-Rail? You have to have a car in the first place and park and ride. That doesn't really help people who don't have access to a car or can't even drive a car for whatever reasons. Yeah.
What would, I don't know this, what would you say if you had to guess, is the population of Miami and probably the population of this little outline? So Miami in
Right.
total, what's the population, what would you say?
Miami-Dade County.
You got Google over there.
Sorry? 400,000, I think.
400.
400,000?
No, it has to be more
That's a
than
city of
that.
Miami.
That might be Miami.
Population
Just
of
Miami.
Miami-Dade County is about 4.5, 5 million people.
Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
and then this area, what would you say? 400?
I don't know.
Tough to say. Okay.
It's tough to say, but it's definitely such a minuscule part of Miami.
Well,
Anybody else? Thank you all.
Hi everyone, so my name is Melanie Moody and today I'll be presenting my advocacy project on information freedom in Cuba. So currently I am a junior pursuing a major in political science and a certificate in Latin American and Caribbean Studies at FIU. I'm an intern at Congressman Mario Diaz-Balert's office here in DC, and in terms of like my personal interests, I'm really interested in campaign communications, digital media. So my ask is relating to Cuba's FIU's relationship to Cuba, as we are one of the largest Hispanic serving institutions in the country, and we also have the largest population of Cuban students and Cuban faculty in the country. So I think that we have a vested interest in supporting efforts aimed at countering the propaganda in Cuba and also increasing information freedom in Cuba. Information freedom is one of the core tenets of any functioning democracy. If we don't have access to the internet, we don't have access to free information, that presents human rights issues, and it also prevents citizens and constituents from being able to communicate freely with one another and organize. So our partners include Center for Free Cuba, which is an independent, nonpartisan organization promoting human rights and democracy. They share a lot of free information online, and they play a very big role in terms of like disseminating information on the island. There's also the Office of Cuba Broadcasting. They oversee the Radio and Television Martí, which is a multimedia hub of unbiased media that aims, again, like Center for Free Cuba, at disseminating information there. And then there's also the South Florida delegation, including my boss, Mario Diaz-Balert, Maria Elvira Salazar, Carlos Jimenez, who are all very committed to fighting for human rights in Cuba, and they've allocated a lot of funding for democracy projects there. So I don't think I made it clear earlier, but really the intention of the project is to not allocate more funding, because there's already a lot of money that's going toward Cuba, which is a great thing. But it's more so to, again, establish a relationship between FIU and the kind of information freedom advocacy groups in Cuba. So that includes the OCB, the Office of Cuba Broadcasting, which we just talked about. And again, it would be focused on delivering accurate and unbiased news there. There's also the Open Technology Fund, which is a nonprofit within the US, and they are kind of like at the head of innovative technologies that would give Cuba, for example, there's like broadband networking, which I think our professor knows more about than me, and that would allow Cubans to be able to bypass censorship measures, because of the issue is that Cuba is intentionally blocking information from the citizens on the island. They could have access, but they don't. So yeah. Thank you, and if you have any questions.
Any questions?
Can we go back, and this is funny because I kind of think your presentations are a little connected, a little bit. We're talking about information, we don't want misinformation, but does that rely on corruption, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So do you think it's a leadership issue with, or I guess compounding with kind of the misinformation or a lack of censorship, et cetera, et cetera? Like, what do you think is the problem there, how to solve it?
Yeah, so Cuba was basically offline until like 2008, and it underwent a digital revolution. They gained access to a lot of things that they didn't have access to before. And then around 2018, Cubans basically became online. And so from that point on, the Cuban regime has used Cubans' access to internet against them. They've weaponized it against them. And so in 2019, they had these really large protests, the largest protests in Cuba that have happened in decades, against the oppression of the regime. And they took that opportunity to basically shut down the internet there. Electricity, any of you have visited Cuba recently, there's essentially always a shutdown of electricity. So it's not only just affecting the internet, but it's affecting daily, things that we use on a daily basis, like water, electricity, etc. So I think that the issue is the Cuban regime, and I think that for as long as they are in power, we will continue to have issues with access to internet there.
So there is a relationship.
Yeah.
It's fine.
What's your recommendations for FIU, fully based on like some of the intel and stuff that you've gotten or research that you've done on like the broadcasting and all of that?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, from my knowledge, I don't think we have a relationship with the Office of Cuban Broadcasting. And they're located in Miami, so I feel like FIU should have a relationship with them just because they do such important work on the island. But yeah, we have amazing faculty. We have Professor Eduardo Gamara. We have the Cuban Research Institute, which FIU is one of the only universities in the country that has such an organization. So I think that if we use those partnerships and we leverage that, we get Congress involved, I think that would be great.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
So my name is Sarai. I'm happy to be here to share for the entire, so the fruits is a way to say like have been this entire semester here in DC, and this is my policy project, empowering civil society in Latin America to combat corruption. So por un mundo mejor. That is not. What is the okay? So Latin America is beautiful, perfectly, and but we have a lot of issues there, and even that. So the organized crime, the transnational organized crime, is affecting not even all countries in Latin America, but also in United States, and we can see many problems there, like guns, human trafficking, firearms trafficking, money laundering, drug trafficking, and even we can see that security crisis exacerbate the immigration that is also a big issue in the US. So, and when I want to bring this is because we need to understand the link between organized crimes and corruption. The corruption is happening in Latin American countries, okay? So, because sometimes, as I told you in the title, we need to help the civil society organizations to become stronger, and they can be more, participate and be involved in those issues. So, because they need to, in some way, expose that corruption, because that corruption practically obstacle the transparency. And what is the key here is a strength, as I told you, we need independent agencies of civil society. In that way, that could be hold the government accountable for that. And so, in this, I'm presenting today a regional anti-corruption project. So my clear ask is funding a project leading for FIU, of course, who has the experience in this type of issues to building and prevent, about the civil society capacity building to prevent, identify, and expose corruption and impunity. So actually, El Salvador, they already have a project related to that, but it's only in Salvador. That is not enough, to be honest. we need to expand this type of projects in Latin America. What type of countries? Could be Guatemala, could be why not Ecuador, where I'm from. And so, what is the proposal? As I told you, strengthen the capacity of civil society organizations. So, so what is, I like to dive deeper into the challenge to pose, because we need to, as I told you, expose the corruption, kleptocracy, and impunity. And we need as well understand that this undermines the democracy in those countries, the rule of law, and even the public trust in the institutions. So for that, I would like to include, I did not prepare that, but I would like to include the story of the case study in Ecuador, because my mom, she's judge in Ecuador, and I have the privilege and opportunity of having her here. And probably she wants to maybe give a share of your experience as a judge there. You can come. Yeah. So she only speaks Spanish, but I'm gonna translate that. She is gonna talk about, as a judge, what's happening there. So there is happening right now an anti-corruption investigations there. So that's what we are gonna to let you know. So les estoy diciendo que vas a dar información de tu experiencia como jueza allá, que actualmente en Ecuador está habiendo una investigación anticorrupción manejada por la fiscal. Entonces puedes decirlo y yo voy a la traducción.
Okay.
¿Y por qué es importante que la sociedad civil se organice y participe para combatir este tipo de corrupción que está en la área del gobierno o en las instituciones públicas?
Ok, muchas gracias. Saludos cordiales para todos ustedes. Realmente no estaba preparada para dirigirme a ustedes en este momento. Sin embargo, me siento muy feliz de estar aquí, de escucharlos, su intervención, esa participación activa que deben tener todos los jóvenes. Es realmente reconocer esa labor de ustedes, de quienes los instruyen, así como también de esa activación de ustedes para un futuro mejor para todo el mundo.
Okay, so she is extending the greetings, and she says she has not prepared to be here, but she is happy to having the opportunity to talk with you all, and she's very impressed that seeing you, the young people working in this type of project that are very important, and she congratulates as well the instructor and all leaders that they are part of their, learning and teaching. So if I'm, skipping something, please forgive me. Okay.
Me he desempeñado como jueza ya alrededor de 10 años.
She has been a judge as 10 years ago.
En la materia penal, todo lo que es criminalidad.
In the penal law.
En estos momentos, la función judicial en el Ecuador está pasando por momentos muy críticos.
In this moment, the judicial system in Ecuador is going through critical moments.
En virtud de que la corrupción se ha inmiscuido en el poder judicial, en el poder ejecutivo y en el poder legislativo del país.
Because the corruption is real and is you can see it in the branches of judiciary, legislative, and executive.
Es necesario que exista una depuración de todos los poderes del Estado para garantizar que los ciudadanos tengamos acceso a una justicia libre, a una justicia sin intromisión de otros poderes del Estado.
So it is important clean those powers to having an independent justice and even in all the powers, all the branches.
Por eso es necesario la participación de la sociedad civil, de los jóvenes y de todos los que componemos una sociedad para siempre estar vigilantes, que el Poder Judicial se le garantice la independencia judicial.
That's why it's important the participation of civil society, all young people, everyone, to try to combat this corruption and guarantee the independence, the justice y ¿cuál fue la última parte? Disculpa.
Una independencia.
The independence in the judicial system.
Okay.
To make accountable the holding these people who is involved in the corruption.
Por eso les felicito, sigan adelante en su proyecto, su participación es muy importante. Vigilantes siempre de que la independencia judicial se garantice en cualquier parte del mundo.
So that is important. You're still working on this type of projects, and because we need overseeing what's happening in the government, in the judicial system, in institution, public institutions, to having a better society.
Thank you.
So basically, is that I wanted to present you. Of course, FIU is perfectly in that they have experience. Even they are already having projects related to issues related to organized crimes and related to they are doing research about how to prevent the kids getting in the gangs that is happening in the Central America. So that's why my client is Professor Dr. Jose Miguel Cruz. I already had some meetings with him, and he gave me more idea. He helped me a lot building this project. He let me give me like the better focus and to be specific, because we have a lot of issues there, and you don't know where start. And he said, Sarai, this is gonna be a key, and I trying to help him. I let him know so I can help you with an event that they want to have in here in DC. Probably it's gonna be in summer. And so sorry, I forgot to tell you, Jose Miguel Cruz is the research director in Kimberly Green Latin American and Caribbean Center. And another key player or client is the director of Central Administration of Justice. And for the side of the stakeholders, we have the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement, that they already show interest in funding this type of projects. And also, the Bureau is part of the Department of State, and as well, United States Agency, USA, and also in the side of the congressman, the Congress, we have Diaz Balart and Joaquin Castro. In the corporate side, I'm thinking on the Center of Strategic International Studies, Inter-American Development Bank, and the World Bank. Well, so this I was telling you, this is the summer event that is supposed to happen here in FIU DC, where they are gonna present the initiatives that to pushing this type of project. So I'm so happy to be here, to be honest. I feel like I'm different after this internship, Washington seminar, so thank you so much, FIU.
Any question?
Oh yes, sorry. Any question for me?
One question. Sorry, I'll be quick. Because we spoke about Ecuador earlier, right? We spoke about the president. Question for your mom, kind of, you as well. She's been working a role for 10 years. Does she see the systemic change going forward positive with your leadership, negative, or kind of the same path and hard to change?
Can you make me again the question?
Where does he see Ecuador going positive, negative, or
Okay,
same?
what part right now
Yeah.
with the new president that we
New
are seeing?
president, we're talking
this-
about corruption and where do
Yeah.
you see it going?
Okay, perfect. So, él quiere saber tu opinión de cómo está actualmente el Ecuador, cuál es el camino que está yendo ahora Ecuador con este proyecto que están haciendo de anticorrupción, la investigación. ¿Tú crees que es positivo o es negativo? ¿Cuál es tu opinión respecto a eso?
It's okay.
Bueno, el tratar de que se transparenten las actuaciones de los funcionarios judiciales siempre va a ser positivo. Siempre va a ser positivo.
So, encouraging or procuring transparency in the institutions always gonna be positive.
Lo peligroso es permitir que el populismo se introduzca en los poderes que son independientes.
So the dangerous part is let the populism get involved in the independence powers, seeing populist presidents, seeing, in other words, it's like I know I'm doing an interpretation, but the words is like trying to make happy to the people and don't do it that you have to do, like having independency in the judicial system. So I wanna give them this because they elect me for the next years. So that's my interpretation, but I'm pretty sure that we see what she's trying to tell us because we are talking about before.
El Ecuador requiere seguridad. El Ecuador requiere transparencia. El Ecuador requiere una justicia independiente, no intromisión al poder judicial, porque así se garantizan los derechos de todos los ciudadanos. Si el poder judicial es afectado, es interrumpido en sus decisiones, no va a haber garantías para cada uno de los ciudadanos, porque el juez no va a poder decidir. Ese es el riesgo cuando un gobierno o el poder ejecutivo intenta introducir sus manos al poder judicial.
So she wants to say we need to respect the independency of the judicial, because if the one branch of power is over, that we lost the independency. Y él quiere saber que cómo ves ahora Ecuador, ¿están yendo por un camino positivo o un camino negativo con esto?
Es un proceso, hay que ir, estamos abajo, tenemos que ir subiendo.
So she said it's a process. Right now she feels in the judicial branch they are in the low of the process, but probably they are gonna, getting up in that process of anti-corruption investigation.
Sí, el tiempo, necesitamos tiempo.
They need time to see how it's gonna become this.
Seems like same everywhere, politics, huh?
Exactly.
Follow that.
Exactly. So, como donde sea en la política. So,
Poder judicial, no política.
she said, judicial power, no
Understand that.
politics.
Here, a little tricky. Yeah.
SNC standard. Good evening, everyone. My name is Calvin Bin Kosman. I'm delighted to be here with you all. Today I'm going to be speaking about I'm going to be speaking to you about a promising initiative in healthcare and AI. As a Hamilton Scholar, I had the opportunity to intern with the Committee on Energy and Commerce, and now I recently transitioned to the Committee on House Administration. For my policy project, I'm proposing HHS to give FIU a $2.6 million grant from the fiscal year 2025 discretionary budget. For the intended use, this proposal is to develop an AI software system that can detect fraud by analyzing accounts that manage Medicare Part A and Part B payments. Currently in Medicare, to understand why this is needed, you have to understand the current state of Medicare. You technically have two options. You can either go the traditional Medicare route, which is with the government, or you can go with Medicare Advantage, which is with a private entity. The idea is that Medicare is slowly transforming and more people are transitioning to Medicare Advantage, meaning more people are choosing to receive more diverse care options and honestly pay lower premiums. As we approach 2033, the fund that fuels Medicare, which is the Social Security Trust Fund, is slowly running out and people will be having to pay more out-of-pocket costs and higher premiums. Medicare Advantage population has jumped from 2007 from 19% to a whopping 51% in 2023. This increased trend portrays a concern why we need this algorithm to detect the fraud, especially when it's coming from a private company billing the American government. So you may ask, like, what will this algorithm look like? The algorithm is more of a financial auditing tool. It conducts oversight of the financial systems. It'll be very simple. It can turn 100 documents into 40 highlighted documents that will basically say, hey, look, this is flagged, we need to go over this, and this is kind of suspicious, as you can see, like the robot highlighting the numbers. Who's going to be leading the charge? The charge and the initiative is going to be led by FIU's College of Engineering and Computing faculty and students. The teacher in charge is going to be Himanshu Upadhyay. And the data that's going to be used for this project is from the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. This is a big project and private stakeholders will be involved as well. For example, United Health Group, Baptist Hospital, Humana, some of the biggest private healthcare providers. Disclaimer, there's going to be no care denied. This is simply on the back end of the initiative. No one's going to be denied care in this project. Understanding why FIU has the frontline position for this initiative is the main reason why FIU should receive this grant. Florida ranks #2 for the highest Medicare rate in the entire United States, coming just right under California, according to Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. In addition, South Florida ranks #1 in healthcare fraud among all districts in the United States, nearly triple as much as the next in line, which is the Eastern District of Michigan. In 2023, Miami-Dade County had the highest rate of Medicare Advantage enrollment in the state of Florida, with 79% of enrollees being Medicare Advantage. This is a big transition. As you can see, people are deciding to go private, and more of that money is leaving the government and funding these private companies. So what's going to be the strategy to secure this funding? We're going to, as shadowed by Mr. Carlos Becerra, we're going to be bringing students from the College of Engineering and Computing. We're going to bring them down to FIU in DC, and we're going to take them on a tour of different healthcare departments. First, we're going to start off with Health and Human Services. Second, then we're going to go to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And the third, we're going to be speaking to the Social Security Administration. Day 2 is going to be Capitol Hill Day. We'll be meeting with the Senate Finance Committee, Senator Mike Braun. Then we'll be meeting with the Florida delegation and the AI task force reps Maria Salazar, Kat Kamick, Laura Lee, Jay Obernolte. And then the last meeting for day 2 will be with Representative Vern Buchanan, which is Ways and Means. This issue is more on the Senate Finance and Ways and Means than Energy and Commerce. But a lot of these members that are in these separate committees that have different jurisdictions also play a big part in getting those votes and getting that money passed in the appropriations process. Day 3 is going to be the Medicare stakeholders and event day. Students will be meeting with huge private insurance companies, as I mentioned, Humana, United Health Group, and throughout the day we'll be meeting with them, and then at the end we'll hold a big reception. We'll invite panelists, individuals we met throughout the project, and yeah. Thank you. You guys have any questions?
Sure, I have a question. It was a great presentation. I really enjoyed listening to it. Do you have any type of specific solutions that you're looking at, or any kind of research that you've learned that might help with funding and whatnot?
Yeah, so this project is mainly going after that money that's being lost when in like the financial payments. If you can just like go a little bit more into your question.
Like any specific solution, like in programs, any programs that you want to target?
Yeah, so it's this project is mainly going after Medicare Part A and Part B, which is more of like the medical equipment, the laboratory tests. Most of the time, these things that are provided to individuals can be very suspicious because someone can just have a private shop and say, hey, we're giving out all this equipment, and then there's no sense of oversight because people can just write things down, bill Medicare, and then technically get paid for it, when in reality they're probably not giving any service to anyone.
I'm not, so you talk about AI and creating the system.
Yeah.
You talk about the algorithm of the system, sorry. One thing I would say is just to keep in mind when you're thinking about the system, think about like making sure it's not detecting any bias.
Mhm.
So you know, like when you create systems or we have these new AI systems, when you create these problems and talk about those problems, make sure you have those solutions or those steps as you go and think about AI systems. Because that's one thing I would say that somebody will bring up, or in your conversations when you have like Capitol Hill Day, they will bring up how are you working with the algorithm? How are you making these, like maybe a problem you might not think about might come up later in your plan or whatever the pitch you're using. So that's just something, not really a question.
And I'm glad you bring that up. That's another reason why FIU could be leading this charge. FIU is known as being an international school, having a diverse student body, and bringing those people together, bringing the Florida population. There's many different types of different groups of people that can partake in this. And yeah, I think 100% when it comes to AI, it has to be diverse, it has to be incorporating, and it has to be inclusive. You can't just measure a single set of people, you can't just measure just men, not women. So yeah, I think you're 100% right.
So good evening, my name is Catherine Mesa, and for my Hamilton Policy Project, I'll be focusing on the intersection of public research institutions and the progression of environmental resilience. So a little bit of background, my major is political science, my minor is international relations, and I'm focusing my concentration on human rights and political transitions as well as civic leadership, and I'm currently the government relations intern here at the FIU in Washington, D.C. office. So for my project, I'll be focusing on the U.S. Department of Commerce's Economic Development Administration's South Florida Climate Tech Hub. So through the U.S. Department of Commerce, there's around 31 tech hubs across the country, but the South Florida Tech Hub is the only climate resilient tech hub. And so some of the aims of this Climate Ready Tech Hub is to expand climate resilient infrastructure, equitable workforce development, and entrepreneurial advancement. And currently the Tech Hub is in phase 2 of its application process, and if it reaches its fulfillment, it can receive up to $70 million worth of federal funding. So some of the success metrics of the Climate Ready Tech Hub is the creation of around 23,000 good-paying jobs with a mean salary of $83K. In addition, it is projected to add $41 billion to the region's GDP and is also aimed at protecting shorelines, coastal ecosystem, as well as advancing climate technologies to deal with extreme weather events and energy efficiency. And over here you can kind of see a little bit of the projected plan by Miami-Dade County. So for my clients, I'll be focusing on 3 departments at FIU, the Institute of Environment, Engineering and Computing, as well as the Extreme Events Institute. And so FIU is a consortium member of the Climate Ready Tech Hub, and so some of the research that we're engaging in at our university are being tied to the Tech Hub. So some of those include the ultra high performance concrete, wall of wind, Biscayne Bay water quality testing, and environmental restoration robotic system. So for my ask, the aim is to increase federal funds allocated towards research and development for climate tech advancements. So as an intern here at the FIU in Washington, D.C. office, I work for governmental relations, and part of my duties is in regards to advocacy for the university, as well as submitting appropriations forms to the government. And so the way that works is we submit requests for certain FIU initiatives and aims of increasing funding towards our research. So some of those federal agencies where the money is being delegated through is the National Science Foundation, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, NOAA, and NIST. And so throughout the course of the semester, we were engaging in a few different university initiatives tied to climate technologies and environmental initiatives in general. So on 305 Day, we actually had panelists from the Aspen Institute and Emerge America speak on climate technologies. In addition, we had our first ever reverse fly-in. So we actually had federal officials come down to Miami, visit FIU and to our research facilities to kind of get a better understanding of what FIU is doing in regards to environmental resiliency. So over here you can just see some pictures as well as their visit to the FIU outfit. And thank you so much. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any specific oh, go ahead, Kelly.
I guess just to like clarify, you're asking for federal funds, is that through federal appropriations or is that any specific grant that you're looking at?
So through the U.S. Department of Commerce, it's through the CHIPS and Science Act. That's what's I guess dispersing the money throughout all the tech hubs. But FIU in particular, we're consortium members, so a lot of our research initiatives are tied to our appropriations request forms, which are also tied to the tech hubs. So it's just, in general, just fulfilling or progressing federal funds towards these initiatives.
Thank you.
Any specific recommendations that you have based on your research?
Nothing in particular. It's just we're in phase 2 of the application process, so we just kind of have to see where it leads to, but hopefully we receive the full $70 million for it.
Any other questions? No? Photographer?